So here we are. We're here talking Andor, and I'm down to my backup laptop, which is why if you're watching on YouTube, I'm completely color washed. I do, we're not in the first part of Wizard of Oz, or singing or dancing. So I am actually here instead to talk about Andor, which is probably the opposite of Wizard of Oz, I'd say. Or is it? We're not going to talk about that. I'm here with two fun individuals, someone who is a very regular appearer, has many regular appearances on Comics in Motion, and obviously on Genuine Chit-Chat as well. It is Tonya Todd. How are you doing, Tonya?
I'm enjoying this retro look that you have going on, because it's kind of like bits of Andor, where it seems like it was filmed in the 70s,
Yeah, so my clothing is like tattered and falling apart, so it works. The aesthetic works.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I know. In fact, I'm thinking my video is actually, oh God, I've just turned my video on, which is all good. This is really, really good. I haven't even introduced the other guest. There you go.
Very
now
professional.
I've pressed the HD button, and now it's got a red tinge to it. There we go. So that's it. Perfect. This is 4K
the Empire
quality.
is taking over. That's what it is.
That's how we roll. But we must introduce the Emperor. Clearly, it is Thomas. And you on your Twitter handle you have 3 names, but in the Zoom call you have 2 names. So please introduce yourself as how you will formally and furthermore be known as.
Or like I like to call him, Mr. Rochester.
Sounds more like a pet name I don't want to get into.
Meow. You can call me Thomas Carter Rochester. I am a podcaster, an actor. I do a little bit of everything and a little bit of nothing all at the same time.
It's called living, bro. Sorry, that sounded like someone say on a gap year. I love it. It's
I just want to say, Mike, that I bet you Tony got the reference. He knows it's a Jane Eyre reference, not anything naughty.
I don't even really know who Jane Eyre is. It's a book, I think. I don't know who it's written by.
Megan spank him, and not in any kind of fun way.
I don't really like being spanked, so it wouldn't be fun for me anyway. But she's watching Come Dine With Me and eating toast, I'm afraid. So, yeah. So, sorry, Tony, about the Jane Eyre reference, even though I think Tony is so far behind on Disney Plus shows that he probably won't be listening to this for about another 5 years. So, if I actually make sure that I can read or consume whatever Jane Eyre is, I think it's a book, isn't it? Is Jane Eyre a book?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Okay. Who wrote it?
I'm not even going to dignify that.
I assume it's not going to be Jane Austen, is it? 'Cause she only wrote the 6 books.
It's not Jane Austen.
Is it Charles Dickens? Is it a male or female? I can name probably.
You're over there.
It was me. I wrote it.
Oh, that's why it's so embarrassing.
Dear readers, this is so sad.
I can tell you who wrote pretty much any Star Wars book, but I can't tell you who wrote Jane Eyre.
Let's stick to the material at hand, and you have homework now.
Well, I'm just going to Google it right now if you don't tell me, because I can't handle listening to a podcast and someone asks a question and doesn't give the answer. It kills me. So I have to.
Oh, am I torturing you?
Well, not really. It's just if I was listening to this, I'd be like, why can't they just tell me the answer rather than me having to Google
Because everybody else knows the answer, Mike.
Thomas, do you know the answer to this?
I said it was me. I went back in time with King the Conqueror and went through the world between worlds with my boy Thrano, and all 3 of us, we wrote the book.
There are sisters who write books. She's one of them.
I've looked it up. I found it. Is she the one who wrote Little Women? No,
I am
Charlotte Bronte. Is that how you pronounce it? This is a nice little English lesson for me.
Yeah, that me, the American, is giving you.
Yeah, but you're like a literary person. My brain is failing today, as you can probably have already been able to tell. But yeah, I don't actually know much about classic literature. I know very, very little about classic literature or anything to do with most famous authors. I could probably name like 2 Dickens books, I think.
Well, you might find that a lot of classic literature has actually informed comic books and other modern characters.
Oh, Wuthering Heights. That's what Emily Bronte wrote. Right. Yeah, my English teacher used to go on about that, and I've never seen it. So I'm not going to... We better not talk about this, because actually it's not the reason we're here, Tonya. I know you kept forcing me to talk about this, and you refused.
I said, let's get back to the material at hand. You're the one who segued into the Google search. I don't think if people rewind, that's what they're going to hear. I don't think that's the case. But don't rewind. Don't rewind, guys. Just keep with us. Don't rewind. Just trust me. But we're here to talk about the penultimate episode of Andor, the daughter of Ferrix. So we are
almost at the end of Andor, which is very fun. So let's hear some opinions on the Andor show before you watch this episode, so up to episode like 10. What did people think? We'll start with you, Thomas. What was your kind of thoughts on Andor up to this point? And before Andor started, were you that hyped for the Andor show? Like, tell us the journey you've had with the show.
So before Andor, it's important to note that Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars movie. So I was very excited, but cautiously optimistic at the same time. It became a joke on my podcast that Andor was never coming out because like, oh, this sizzle reel, we've seen this sizzle reel. And when we saw the trailer, I was like, oh, it is going to be as good as Rogue One. Like that's good. That makes me feel better because at the very least it'll be, behind Mando and Rebels. Like that's its peak. And so far, 10 episodes in, it hasn't finished yet, and I'm already like, yeah, this is probably going to beat Rebels. Like, this is going to be the greatest Star Wars show of all time for me on any list that I make. I'm very hype. I'm very, very hype on this show. I can't wait to see season 2. I might be more intrigued about season 2 because it's supposed to be A, different, and B, they're jumping through 4 years or whatever they said in the trades, and they're talked about. So it's like, okay, sure, let's see where that goes. But Tanya's over here plugging her ears. They've talked about the Andor show is going to lead all the way up to Rogue One, and then they went from 5 seasons down to 2. Oh well, don't read Entertainment Weekly.
Tonya doesn't watch trailers, look at posters, listen to people talk about stuff, check out any memes of anything. It's just all, I don't know how she does it, but
I just walk around blind.
Yeah, well, I just think it's the trick is what we're doing in Comics in Motion secretly is we're trying to get you into like your social media handles associated with certain keywords. So on your social media handles, more things relating will come up, and then you won't be able to avoid it because we're all secretly jealous. Because if you go into something with not knowing anything, in a lot of ways, it's actually can be a lot more satisfying experience. But the work it takes,
it is
to not know all these things, is just far too much to be a level I can even possibly fathom. Is trying to avoid. I try to avoid a trailer, and all that happens is every screenshot gets memed by something within about a week, and so I've just seen the whole trailer in pieces. So I'm like, that's why I watch, like, apart from like when TV spots come out, things like that. If a new Star Wars trailer drops, if I don't watch it the second I hear about it, it will be spoiled for me anyway. So yeah, that's where it comes from. But I do try and guard, your precious spoiler.
You do a very nice job of guarding me.
I try. It's not my choice. You live a different lifestyle to me, but I respect that. And that's the theme. That's one of the themes of Andor. It's not. So thank you for.
It's my alternative lifestyle, spoil free.
But Thomas, I agree with pretty much everything you've been saying, and I'm glad you mentioned Rebels because Rebels is for me peak Star Wars. I think the original trilogy is obviously in its own right amazing, but for me, Rebels is the best piece of Star Wars content that exists. And I would say that although it's still going to be my favorite, most likely because certain characters like Kanan and etc., I don't think you can top that with the characters we're given in Andor because the major characters I'm interested by, we already know their fates. But I feel like the actual show itself is a better made show and is like almost. It's just like Rebels is my favorite, but Andor's basically better in a lot of ways, even though they're aiming at slightly different things. But Tonya, please tell us what you thought of Andor. And also, obviously, I think you've said because of me, you watched Rebels. So what do you think? And what's your thoughts on Andor versus Rebels?
I think it's an unfair comparison because, number one, it's two different mediums, and we had multiple seasons to compare, and not all of those seasons were the same level of quality. Mm-hmm. So definitely, if we're going first season versus first season, this one kicks its ass out of the water because the first season is so terrible on Rebels. But
it's not terrible. It's just
in comparison to the rest, it is.
It's far better than Series 1 of the Clone Wars. Let's get that straight out. Series 1 of the Clone Wars,
which is also rough. Terrible.
Apart from like Lair of Grievous and the last 4 episodes, it's just the rest of it is so slow.
That's like saying Iron Man is terrible because the rest of the MCU got elite.
I don't think that Iron Man is terrible. I think it's one of the better ones.
Yeah, I don't think season 1 of Rebels is terrible.
I don't think season 1 of Rebels is
pretty amazing.
I think Clone Wars Series 1 isn't very good.
I'll say season 1 of Clone Wars is bad.
Yeah, it's like apart from 5 episodes, it's like, yeah, just skip it.
Okay, but would you both qualify yourselves as apologists in the Star Wars universe?
I am. But I will always admit when something in Star Wars doesn't work. I just don't think there's a piece of Star Wars content in the canon that is actively a bad whatever it is. I think there are bad elements.
Solo?
I like Solo's better than Rise of Skywalker.
How dare you? Thank you.
What? Solo is my sixth favorite movie.
Yes. Thank you.
It's a cool movie. It's not the first watch. I was like, yeah, that was all right, kind of unnecessary and kind of pointless in a lot of ways. But the more you watch it, it's like this is just I know it's stupid, but if you feel it, it's the least Star Warsy kind of feeling Star Wars movie in a lot of ways, just because it's like this. It's basically a Western in a lot of ways. It wouldn't have to be Star Wars if you just put another skin over it and called the characters different things and set it like in the American Wild West times. Most of the plot would make sense and work.
I need you to come on my show and defend Solo with me because I agree. I got roasted because I put it at number 6 in all of the movies. It's number 6, and Rise of Skywalker is not last, but it's close.
I think Phantom Menace and Rise of Skywalker are probably the worst films, even though I enjoy Phantom Menace more, but it's probably because Phantom Menace gets better as it goes, whereas Rise of Skywalker gets worse as it goes. And I prefer a film that's a slow build rather than a drop. But we're not here to talk about those two things, because I would love to, as you can tell, but I'm trying not to talk too much, but Thomas is bringing it out of me. I'm trying.
Just when you think you've made it out, I pull you back in.
We're gonna have to get someone who's listening to make a count of all the pop culture references that Thomas makes in this. I have to have a tally of it. I'm not going to do it just to clarify.
I would like to know that tally, actually. I just say stuff.
You just need a clicker. We just need you to get one of those little clickers that's just like you press the button, it goes up by one number.
Or like CinemaSins.
Yeah. And we look at you on the camera, like finger, like bing, ding, and then you just got to click it.
Ding.
Yeah. That's exactly it. So
someone more talented than we are can handle that.
100%. But Tonya, obviously you gave your thoughts on Rebels vs. Andor, which I appreciate in a lot of ways, and I do agree to an extent. I think so far Andor's a lot more consistent than Rebels. But
you know what? I appreciate that you influenced me to watch it. I hadn't. It didn't seem like it was going to be good. I hadn't watched the Clone Wars, and because of you, I watched both of them, and I enjoyed both of them a great deal. And it makes the overall universes feel it fills it out. You know, it's like. Mm-hmm. You can watch Andor and see how someone could just watch this without knowing any of the other Star Wars stuff. It would be an enjoyable sci-fi show. You don't need to know the references. But when you do know the references, it just makes it that much fuller. It just makes it more enjoyable. And I don't think they're as heavy-handed with the cameos or the fan service. It's there, but it's not, hey, everyone, you see this thing? It's right here. And that makes for better storytelling because it's just part of the world. It's not something that they have to draw a circle around every time they put it on screen.
Mm-hmm. And would you say, Tonya, so far, I know it's harder to compare because there's 2 seasons of Mandalorian and we're not even at the finale yet of Andor, but including episode 11, on the trajectory that it's on, do you think that it's so far as good as Mando, better or worse?
Oh, that's a tough question. And I know that you are not as big of a fan of Mandalorian as I am. I feel like I'd have to watch again because, you know, it did have some of its slow moments. It had some things that I didn't love. But the stuff that I did love, I know that I loved a lot more than the things I love in this show. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Overall, this is probably a more consistent show.
Yeah.
But Mandalorian was more enjoyable for me. Both seasons were more enjoyable for me than this. And I'm loving this. So it's not to say that this isn't great.
It's funny because that's the comparison I've made for people of my opinion of the prequels compared to the original trilogy is that it's not quite the same, but it's like the original trilogy films are so consistent. It's like every time something's happening on screen, it's between like a 7, 8, or 9, but it's normally kind of a running 7 and the things happen. You go, oh, the prequels, it's like, this is like a 4, and then something happens, you're like, this is a 10, and then something goes, okay, this is a 5.
Right, the highs are higher and the lows are lower.
Exactly.
But this is more consistently great.
Yeah, and that's how I felt with Mando to a lesser degree than the prequels, but there's just the odd moment or the odd thing, and you're like, meh, but then something happens, you're like, this is so cool, oh my god, this is why I love Star Wars, and then Andor's like, this is
and then how do you rate what's a better show? Is it the show that gets more emotion out of the audience, more investment from the audience, or the one that tells a better story and has a better quality on screen? What's more successful?
I think for me personally, the way I've described it to people is, I think Mando, apart from Andor, I think Mando has been the best live action show over Kenobi and over Book of Boba Fett. Although I did enjoy
far and above.
I enjoyed them both, but Book of Boba Fett is definitely the weakest Star Wars TV show that exists aside from Resistance. That is pretty weak. But with the way I've described it is that Mandalorian is a great Star Wars show. If you're a Star Wars fan, it's an amazing TV show. If you don't really care about Star Wars that much, you don't really get that much out of Mandalorian, because if you take out the cameos, the references, Grogu, and cool factor, you're not really actually left with much. Whereas with Andor, it doesn't even have half of the things I just mentioned. It's the story is the biggest element of Andor, very closely followed by, I think, sort of each character's performance and acting. And although that, Pedro Pascal is a brilliant Mandalorian, it's all body language. It's kind of like watching Vader act. Yeah, they can be an amazing Vader, but an amazing Vader isn't the same as like DiCaprio in some of his best roles, like Wolf of Wall Street. Like the sheer amount of acting one has to do to perform one of those roles is quite different to another role. So I feel like with Andor, there's more room to explore sort of more full emotional things, and because it's a much more serious show, it doesn't cheapen itself by silly moments, whereas I think most other Star Wars can fall prey to that. I wonder, Thomas, what you kind of think of that comparison before we delve into episode 11.
I like that Tonya was mentioning, is it, giving more service to the fans makes you feel more emotional, or something that's consistent and better storytelling. And I'm like, hey, that both of those for me are Andor. I feel more emotionally invested. It's not fair because in The Mandalorian, everyone can die except Grogu and Mando for me. I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's all cannon fodder. That really degrades some characters, but I'm just saying. Whereas in Andor, the minute that I meet someone, I'm like, whatever. And by the next episode, I'm in love with them. And by the next episode after that, they're dead. And that has become a consistent theme. And so now I'm afraid that everyone's going to die by the end of the next episode. And I'm worried. And I'm starting to grieve the loss of people who are not yet gone. Well, I was doing that, and then this episode took one of them off the board at the very beginning. So that helped the grieving process a little more.
That's a perfect segue into episode 11. So I've got some notes generally of plot details. Obviously, the very first thing we see is Andor Melshi climbing and whatnot. But the main sort of the centerpiece of this episode and what it's building towards that we're going to see in the next episode is the death of Marva, and what each of all these stories that we've been seeing, of all the episodes so far, there have been a lot of individuals doing things, and some have been somewhat interconnected, or Andor's been a link between some of them, but there hasn't yet been one specific thing where all of them are kind of all eyes at the same place at the same time. Now, Marva's funeral seems to be, as this episode's been unfolding, we've been showing each group of characters' perspectives on this event and what it means to each of them and their own goals. So it's something that I thought is done incredibly well. And one thing I was surprised by is we didn't actually see Marva die. We had hints of that, and
which
then we
makes
saw
me
afterwards.
not trust it.
Well, that's what I thought initially, but I feel like I can't tell if they're doing it to be somewhat respectful in a way, kind of being like, we don't need to show you an old woman dying. Every character says she's dead, and we see some body under a cloak or something going, out of there. But what did you kind of think of this whole start to this, Tonya?
It feels like it's just a lead up to something. The whole episode, every scene felt like it's just the beginning of something. And I feel like more than some of the other episodes, it was, we're just going to go with this character just for this brief moment, and then we're moving to this character for this brief moment. There weren't a lot of repeats. Most of the characters that we saw, we just got one little segment with them. Mm-hmm. And that was it. We never went back to their story. So it doesn't really feel like a complete episode because it didn't tie up pretty much anything. And, it's the kind of story that they're telling where you need to watch the entire thing to get it. So it didn't feel episodic to me. It felt like the beginning of another long movie, like the way the first three felt like you had to watch them all in one sitting. Mm-hmm. Watching them alone didn't really work. And I have noticed that the people who are complaining about the beginning of the series, they didn't watch the first three.
No.
They only watched one and they weren't hooked. And so they didn't want to pick it up and continue watching.
Yeah. I wonder if they should have done what they did with Bad Batch. I know it's a much, a shorter show, Bad Batch, but have the premiere be like the mini movie. So they have the 3 episodes in one go. And I feel like that would have turned off more people, but only by a small percentage. But I feel like anyone who did give it a proper watch would have been hooked afterwards, rather than people trying episode 1 and pulling back after that. Because I had 2 or 3 people tell me episode 1 was really slow, I didn't continue. And I'm like, no, watch the first 3. If you get to the end of episode 3 and you don't like it, then you can, I can argue with you and tell you to get to episode 6.
If you put it out as one long piece, people understand it's meant to be viewed all in one sitting. But when you put it out in pieces, you risk losing the people who are like, all right, well, this first one didn't grab me. They didn't give you a cliffhanger reason to, you must go to the next episode.
Yeah, I agree. And Thomas, what do you think?
On which part? We went on a couple tangents and I'm ready for all
of them. This is more of a free-for-all, so whatever of that you heard that you want to talk about, just
whatever you were about to say.
So that's my biggest frustration with them announcing they're going to drop the first 2 episodes of Andor on ABC, FX, Hulu, and Freeform next Thursday for American Thanksgiving. Why the first 2? Huge Star Wars fan, at the end of episode 2 was like, man, like really? Like we still haven't gotten to like the end of this, like what's going on? And like I'm a Star Wars fan, I'm hooked. And he shot a guy in the face in the first 5 seconds of the episode. So I was like, yeah, I'm totally in for this. They're going way darker than I anticipated. But a non-Star Wars fan, someone from the general audience, someone who only watched episode 1, well, maybe I'll give the second episode a watch. Nope, it's the same stuff. All you're doing is perpetuating that myth. You should drop all 3. And if you don't have the cojones to do it, then don't do it at all. I think this show does not fit on ABC. I don't think it fits on Freeform. And I think they should have just put it on FX, where What We Do in the Shadows is, and where they've had Sons of Anarchy and stuff like that. Put it there. That's your demographic. Stop acting like it isn't. Put all 3 out. See if you can hook them. But we'll see what it has to, where it goes. And I really do love that Marva dies at the beginning of this episode, and she's the only character so far that has been given a fanfare after death. Everybody else just kind of dies. Nimic, R.I.P., what a guy. He dies. Some other folks die early on in the series. We've had Pac die. No one gets a send-off, but Marva gets the send-off, and that's all we see is the send-off, the respect for her, where everybody else, everything they were doing mattered, but no one knew who they were. And so when they died, they were gone. They didn't matter. And I love the juxtaposition between that and how they've portrayed that. It made Marva's death hit a little harder, especially on my second watch, to be like, wow, she's the only one who's been given like a funeral, if you will. And also, poor little B2, man, he's become so emo this episode. Like, I get that, man. I don't want to be alone either.
He is. I thought of the starting part where you kind of see into his inner workings in a way, almost like you see his mind, and you kind of see him wake up. When that happened, I was like, oh, that's not been done on Star Wars, really. That's an interesting. It's only a moment, but I was like, that's cool. I'd love to see that. I want more droid stuff. Like, I'd love delving into the ideas of AI and consciousness and what is alive and all that sort of stuff. And you get little snippets of 3PO saying odd things. And sometimes in the comics, there's a C-3PO special comic that's a one-off where it shows how he got his red arm. And it literally goes really deep into C-3PO questioning whether or not his consciousness is valued compared to that of an organic. And you're like, this is a Star Wars comic. And you're delving into like a deep, scientific questions that have obviously been raised over the last, almost since the sci-fi genre began, for like nearly 100 years. But it's just so cool having C-3PO just question that. And you get bits of snippets where, like R2-D2, there's a comic with him and he is talking to BB-8 and you see the little speech bubble, the speech thoughts, but you don't notice them till the end. So sorry, Tonya, spoiler. But it's, you get R2-D2 and his whole kind of view on how his existence. He believes the reason he was put in the galaxy was to record the biggest galactic events, because he just keeps finding himself at the pivotal moments in galactic history. So he just believes that's his purpose now, is to record it so there's someone to tell. And there's all these little threads. And I think this tiny little spark of B2 Emo and seeing this droid clearly show some sort of emotion, which obviously his name, I think, is very clearly now indicating that. But that idea, and there's a theory I've heard online, which isn't a spoiler, Tonya, no one's confirmed this officially, but it's the idea that what if B2 Emo's consciousness gets put into K2SO? What if they put that into the Imperial security droid, and that's kind of, and he gets a bit muddled with the Imperial security droid, and what if K2 is actually B2 Emo? And I was like, oh, that's such a cool idea. And if they don't do that now, I'm going to be absolutely devastated.
I've been pitching that for like the last 3 episodes, and everyone calls me crazy, but I'm glad I'm not alone because it's perfect. Think about it. He goes from sad little B2 Emo to K2SO, and he's a sassy little bitch and backhanding you all the time. Cassian, that's a terrible idea, Cassian. I don't think you should do that. I never liked her anyway. Like, it's perfect. He goes from sad to a steel brick of emotion, robot emotion, if you will.
Yeah, he's got the power behind him in a sense. What do you think about that theory, Tonya, or B2 Emo in general?
I'm here for it. I want to see it happen.
Amazing. Concise. Let's move on to the next parts then, which is Cassian and Melchi being caught by some Narkinians. So I only knew that because I watched all these with subtitles on, because with House of the Dragon, when I eventually watch Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power as well, and with Star Wars shows, I've realised that, especially when you're a Star Wars podcaster trying to remember half the goddamn names and species and figure out what on earth is going on half the time without having to watch it 4 times, or refer to Wikipedia every 8 seconds, you put the subtitles on, you're like, oh, character names, this bloke, oh, I've seen it written down now because I'm a visual person, so I'm like, yeah. Whereas in Game of Thrones, it's like, okay, here's Aegon and Aemon, and it's like, oh, all these names are so similar, but you see them written down at one constant.
Right, they are so similar, and they're similar in Star Wars too.
100%. Yeah, there's loads of
planet names, people's names. It's like, why do they have to make it so close? There's all this imagination with everything else, but no, everything's going to sound like Alderaan. You know, like,
well, it's Tatooine and Dantooine, both mentioned in episode 4, the OG Star Wars. But with this part where, the duo, Cassian and Melchi, just to check, I know Thomas knows the answer to this, but did you recognise Melchi at all, Tonya?
No.
Well, why don't you go rewatch a certain Star Wars film then? And
I didn't notice it until someone pointed it out to me, because he was just like, oh, you remember him? And I was like, that's why he looks so familiar. Like, I'm like, I know that face. Who is this face? And when they told me, I was like, oh, thank you. You literally have saved me like another 36 hours of trying to figure out who this guy was.
Do you want to know, Tonya, or should we keep it a secret for you?
Is he the dude that Obi-Wan visits?
No.
Yeah, well, tell me.
Okay, do tell you.
Because I've already seen it.
Yeah, it's Rogue One. In Rogue One, it's Melchi is actually one of the people who storms the beach of Scarif. He volunteers to be in Rogue One, and so he's known, obviously, Cassian.
I am overdue to watch that again anyway.
He's one of the guys. I think he's the guy. I think he's a sergeant at that point. He's Sergeant Melchi. What that rolls off the tongue. And he grabs a walkie, and he's the one who gets called by Bodhi. Down on the ground, and
I keep finding myself watching scenes from it. You know, like, I just want to watch this part. I just want to watch this part. Oh, you know, you get caught up and you watch this little part, but I have not watched it from beginning to end in over a year.
Oh, comprehensive masterpiece.
I almost never watch parts of films on YouTube because any excuse. I've got enough time. I can always make time.
No, I'm not watching it on YouTube.
Oh, I see. You're just skipping through on Disney Plus or whatever.
Yeah.
I see. Well, I've
You're telling me you don't go back and watch the end of that movie? You do not watch the Darth Vader
I've just seen
just
the
to watch that?
Oh, I've just seen the film probably 10, 12 times, if not more, to be honest with you. So it's not. It's kind of burned in. But I've watched the Vader scene by itself once as well, just on YouTube or something.
Wow, I've watched it at least 10 times. just that.
Yeah,
I admire your restraint.
I try not to watch things on YouTube over and over again, because then if I'm like, I really want to watch the Vader scene, that's an excuse to watch the whole movie. Because the problem I find with certain Star Wars or Marvel stuff occasionally is that, like with the prequels especially, is that you can cut out probably about 40 or 50% of the prequels and you're just left with almost gold. And if you hyper focus on that, if you don't suffer through the Anakin Padme love scene in Attack of the Clones, then the Geonosis Colosseum scene doesn't feel as good because you just skipped the great part. You know, that's my argument, because even though I'm a liar, because when I was like a kid and I had it on VHS.
Through the backstory.
When on VHS, I used to skip it so much when I used to rewatch Attack of the Clones over and over again that it used to, on the VHS tape, that a weird staticky line would come up at certain points, because that was the point I'd skip so frequently it like burnt the reel of the VHS. So
hell yeah,
I used to do it a lot, but I don't do it anymore. But we need to get back on this. Cassian and Melshi. So caught by Narkinians and things and taken to Niamos. Niamos, I think is how it's. There we go. So we'll start with you then, Thomas, and we can be a bit more free roam now. We've kind of gone for the start. So with them, how do you feel about them and eventually Cassian getting his money back and stuff? Like, how was your kind of views on Cassian and Melshi in this episode?
I loved Cassian and Melshi in this episode. I think some people have complained on the interwebs of the Titanic that is Twitter going down, that all of a sudden out of nowhere, like, oh, why do I care about Cassian and Melshi? How'd they have such a good relationship? And they kind of forget the fact they spent over a month together living in the same prison. So I felt that it flowed naturally. Like, it's interesting how Melshi goes from the guy without hope to now the guy so full of fear of losing his hope again. Like, it's really resonating how he's made this leap. And Cassian is still just Cassian. Like, nothing's changed. He is somehow even keeled in every little moment throughout this whole series, and even in Rogue One. Like, he never seems flustered. Sometimes he's like Han Solo, but Han Solo gets flustered. Is how I like to approach the Cassian Andor character and tell people about it. So I really love that. Shout out Dewey and Freedy, the Narkinians, Scob the Empire, and all that. But there's another sequence in the beginning where Melshi, Andor, keeps saying, "Oh, they're almost gone. They're leaving. They're almost gone." And he's like, "Stop saying that." And then right at the end of that scene, he goes, "Are they gone yet?" And Andor's like, "Yeah, they're gone." And like they cut to the next scene. It's like beautiful how they go back and forth in that way. Are we allowed to talk about the very end of this episode? It's the final thing on Andor?
Yeah. We can skip right to the end if you want to. Go ahead.
Oh man, when he gets that call that his mom has died, that hurts so bad, because you go out, he goes to a beach, Melchi's happy, like, can you believe it? It's like a dream. And you go to Andor and he's like, this is my nightmare. And the sun is beautiful out there and it's just cloudy, and it's very reminiscent to when he dies on another beach. He just found out his mom died and he's on a beach.
Wait, he dies on a beach? I'm just kidding.
Oh my God, Tonya, you got me. You got me so good. I was like, we just talked about Rogue One. What are you talking about?
That was one of the best parts of it, that they wrapped it up. They didn't draw it out. That was an excellent ending for that.
When you watch his eyes open as he's being blasted by the fire of the Death Star beam, oh man, it hits so much different. I think it was on my birthday. I watched the end of that because it was on TNT, and I was like, yeah, while I was kicking everyone's ass in the game of Clue. And I saw that, and we were only like 4 episodes in on Andor and hadn't even really peaked on anything just yet. And I was like, this hits so much different now. Like, I've always loved that choice where right at the end, he just like I'm on fire. And I'm like, that's a brilliant choice. And now it's coming back in a different way. He does give a blaster to Melshi when they split up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure it's the Pre-Mor blaster he took off of the dude he shot in the face in episode 1. So now Melshi has the weapon in question, and he can't be tied back to that murder with physical evidence. I thought that was a really smart move.
Interesting. Yeah, because I didn't pick up on the significance of the blaster. What about you, Tonya? What do you think of Andor, Melshi, and obviously the ending as well?
I hadn't heard that there was any issues with their relationship. Of course, I have not really been doing social media this week because I've been off the grid. And I tend to stay away from these conversations when I haven't finished a show. Mm-hmm. We talked about avoiding spoilers and all of that. But I think it's completely believable that they would have a kinship. They survived a horrific experience together. And they were on the same team. Like, even anyone that they escaped with, I would think there would be some kind of kinship. But they spent a significant amount of time working together and living in close proximity. So I can't imagine why people would say that was rushed. They did a great job of developing all of that, because that whole prison sequence, that could have been one episode, and then we would have felt like, wow, they really rushed that, but they didn't. They did it. I think it was the exact right pacing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree completely. And I haven't looked online and saw that stuff. Normally when I do these podcasts, I try and avoid anyone else's thoughts on when I do discussion shows. I just watch the episode, maybe close friends if they message me or something, but generally speaking, I don't listen to anyone else's opinion so that it can kind of come out as I'm discussing.
Does that mean you want me to stop messaging you when I watch something? Like,
always
did you see this?
No, always message me. But no, with, like I was saying, anyone else on the internet who's listening, you can always message me about things and moments and stuff. But it's more so, I watch a fair amount of Star Wars YouTubers or YouTube videos and things like that, or follow certain people on Twitter and stuff, and like to hear other opinions on certain Star Wars content. But when it's something like this, I'm like, right, kind of put the blinkers on until I've done the discussion show, because I just want my own kind of thoughts undiluted first. Before I get, other people's influence. Because like with Book of Boba Fett, like I keep thinking I dislike it more than I do, and I'm pretty certain if I rewatch it, I'll actually like it a lot more than I think I do. But because it's not actually terrible, it's just
I think so
nowhere near as good
I feel
as
the
we
same
wanted.
way. It's just in comparison, and it's not what we expected it to be. It's not what we wanted it to be. It's all of these other factors, but there were tons of enjoyable moments.
Yeah, it was really good. I think everyone was kind of on board because it was going to be building up to something, and then it got completely sidelined by Mandalorian. And those Mandalorian episodes are some of the best live action Star Wars we've ever seen.
Right.
So, and then you go back to the ending, which was cool. I liked the ending. I thought it was good fun, but it was like, why have you done this? Why don't you just release the Mando episodes almost separately as like a special? Just have Mando show up, and then before Series 3 of Mando comes out, be like, here's a Mando feature-length special, and it's the two episodes stuck together. That would have been such a better idea. And we'd have kind of felt like the Boba Fett show kind of built with Boba and did end on something, rather than going, here's slow burn, and then nothing. Yeah. And then suddenly you're in it again. Whereas Andor does the opposite of that, which I
think that's why some people didn't give this a shot, because they were so disillusioned with Boba Fett. And then we had Obi-Wan, which, there's a lot of cool stuff that happened, but overall it felt inconsequential.
Mm-hmm. Obi-Wan suffered from series. It should have been a movie. It felt, and there's someone online who has made a version of it into a movie, which I haven't watched. I keep meaning to, but it's trying to convince Megan to watch something she's already seen and sit down for like 3 hours to watch Star Wars. It's like, I need to trade something pretty hefty for that.
Yes, you do.
Well, she wants to watch all the Harry Potter films again, and I'm just like, the only films I've seen as many times as Star Wars is Harry Potter, and I love the Harry Potter films, don't get me wrong, I just don't want to watch them all again. So I'm having to trade.
You should watch that movie you get to watch on that book that we talked about at the beginning that I obviously do not remember because I never learned how to read. It's why I listen to audiobooks.
Oh, you think I should watch the movie of Jane Eyre?
Yeah, and then she'll watch the movie of Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's a perfect trade-off.
I don't think Megan's even, she's not much of a classic literature person. More than I am, but neither of us really are uncultured swine.
And it's better to read it than to watch it.
Yeah, but it's not Star Wars, so probably not going to read it. I did listen to the audiobook of Jane Austen, though. So I did do that. And I am reading a book by Dr. Carl Hart.
Which one?
The first one, Sense and Sensibility, because that was what order it was in on the Audible Jane Austen collection. And I was like, that was pleasant. Let's have a break from it for 4 or 5 Star Wars books, and then I'll listen to one more. And in a few years' time, I'll have probably listened to all 6. I can barely remember what happened in Sense and Sensibility.
But Tony and I will get you on a show and we'll discuss all of them.
Yes, and also Megan's almost finished Buffy as well. We're like halfway through the final season, so I want to organise something like that in the new year. We're not even talking about Andor. We need to get back into it. The problem with this episode is it's not your fault. It's mine. I'm the host, and I do this all the time.
It's definitely not you, Thomas.
Yeah, it's me. But it's just that this episode, although it's a really cool episode, this is probably one of the weaker ones, only on the basis that it is kind of like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. It's like I'm certain the next thing is going to be so phenomenal, and the only way to get there is to kind of put a lot of the groundworky stuff in here, but because normally we get
it's 3 episodes. We ended on such a high on the last episode, so yes. All of the emotions were very high, all of this great storytelling. We just ended on such a great note, and now we have to start building toward the finale, and it felt like a big drop.
Yeah, and also
it wasn't bad, it just emotionally, it wasn't as satisfying. It's never as satisfying when it's the beginning of the arc versus the end of the arc. But I do think that there were some pacing issues in this one.
Yeah, when it ended, I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, not the ending. like there was stuff that happened, mainly I think the bit with Luthen Rail, which we'll get into in a sec, but like aside from that, you take that away and there wasn't nothing necessarily happened. It was just kind of a lot of talking and preparing for Marva's funeral in various ways. But yeah, I do agree.
And the ambush.
Yeah, the ambush that's obviously kind of going concurrent with that. But it's also like with Andor, I found, because you had the 3-episode arc, then the 3-episode arc, and then a 4-episode arc, each of those is, or like the announcement, episode 7 can kind of be classed as maybe its own little episode and then another 3-episode arc, but however you want to kind of view it. But it's these things where you're getting pieces along the way. And yeah, this one, it was kind of just like, we're splitting the pieces. This is all the groundwork stuff. This is all the exciting stuff. And we're just doing that rather than normally it's kind of like a more of a slant. But out of interest, there's another tangent, but it's an Andor tangent. What has been your favorite episode so far? And I imagine the 3 main contenders are episode 3, episode 6, and episode 10. I imagine they're the contenders. For me, I'd say The Eye is still some of the best Star Wars I think I've ever seen, both visually and also for my own enjoyment. But for you two, Thomas, if I ask you first, what's been your favourite sort of one-off episode?
I might have to go with the announcement just because it is so singular. And I really enjoyed watching the absolute pivot that the story does in that episode of, well, yay, we did our thing. What's the fallout? Oh, well, Luthen got what he wanted. The Empire's about to get what they want, but don't realize they want, which is just more power. Well, they definitely always want more power, but they go and it's just like, oh, cool. Now we're just going to tighten our grip around other people's throats until they bow to us. And Luthen's like, yes, good, do that so I can get more rebels to my side. And it leads to the live action reintroduction of, oh God, is he a colonel in this or is he an admiral yet?
Yularen, I assume you're talking about.
Yularen, yes. And I love seeing him. It's very exciting to see where that's going to go. I'm not going to get into how it could tie into Rebels next season, but every white coat I see, I just want a Thrawn. I got Thrawn in here. I feel better about this podcast. I got one word out. He's the greatest of all time. Thank you for listening to this Thrawn podcast talk. But I really enjoyed that episode a lot. And then I might have to go with One Way Out. Like that was just so good out of nowhere. Did not expect it to be as great as it was. And that's saying a lot considering how great the season is.
Very good choices. What about you, Tonya?
Well, I'm not someone who memorized the names of the episodes, but the fact that I remember the name of...
I'm sorry.
Yeah. The fact that I remember One Way Out as a title, I think, is significant. It just, that's the one where I had to contact you. I didn't talk to you about every episode. That's the one where it was like, oh my God, did you see this? I have to talk to you about this. You're the person I know who's going to get what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, the episode was incredible. And I think, obviously, everyone's basically been saying this. I think the guys in the last episode of the discussion show, and I think everyone online has unanimously just said, Andy Serkis just completely stole the show. So phenomenal.
As he was meant to. He was meant to steal that show, and he did it perfectly. He's such a good actor. People don't give him credit for being an actor as a person. He's great in his motion as well, but he is very talented as a human actor.
He's a great Black Panther as well. I know he's been in lots of other films that are not nerd related, but like in that, I was like, wow, he was such a cool character in Black Panther as well. I was just like, Andy Serkis is.
There was fantastic. Just such great writing in that episode, and there were so many moments where it's like, oh, that is a great line. Oh, that is a great line. Oh, that one is too. It's like all of these in the same episode. So that one, I would say, is definitely my favorite. That doesn't mean there weren't really great episodes during this, but that's the one that stands out. And I also don't think it's because it's the most recent. It's not that.
That's the Emmy episode.
Yeah, that one just was such an emotional high that had me just I can't wait to see the next episode, and then it was kind of a letdown because it's a beginning episode. It's not a bad episode, but it wasn't the same thing.
Yeah. It's almost like the prison episode was much more like the people episode, the human episode. That was like, you could put that in any, universe. In any, you could have put that almost in Game of Thrones, you could have put that in the real world as what we are now. Obviously that was a lot of the social commentary was showing that of this was just not just, but this was a Prison Break at the end of the day. But it's just the emotion, every little piece fit together, pun intended, with obviously what they're doing in there, as well as the speech is some of the best acting I've seen in a lot of ways, and some of the best writing of just, you get a lot of speeches, especially in Star Wars, where it's like, quick, say something inspirational. Da, 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 da. Let's say something unfathomably amazing that probably took writers, months to write. And then you get him like stumbling, and you've got Andor going, come on, you can do this. Just tell them what to do. It's what you've been doing. You can
feel the pain in his chest as he's coming up with the courage to be able to speak it. You can feel it.
Yeah. It's incredible. And then obviously that's last line of his, I can't swim. That just hits everything home. But yeah,
right?
it's so good. I mean, me personally, I love the episode very close to how much I love the Eye. I think the Eye is a bit more of a Star Wars-y episode, but it's just the crunch with Nemec that I'm a sucker for, like, horrible stuff happening to characters I like. So it's like a sadist. So when it's burned into my eyes, it's like there's a certain scene in Game of Thrones with Prince Oberyn, which I won't spoil it because a lot of people who haven't seen Game of Thrones, who are liking House of the Dragon, are starting to listen to stuff. So, everyone will know what scene I'm talking about. But like certain scenes are kind of seared into my brain. And with the crunch, when the money hits Nemec, it was just like, I can't unsee that. And that hurt me when that happened. And when I rewatched it, because I watched it and Megan was falling asleep, so she went to bed and I finished it. And then we watched it the next day. And I was like waiting for that bit. And I was like, no, please don't happen again. Please just let me be watching a different version. Like every time I watch it, Revenge of the Sith, and every time Anakin goes to the room with Mace Windu, it's like, come on, please don't do it. Think of all the bad that happens with that scene with Nemec. And then when it happened, she yelled out, no, when Nemec got crunched. And that sticks with me. But getting
that
back
was really good writing too, though, because everyone mattered in that episode. There were no characters that were just kind of there, and you're wondering, why are they involved in this? They made each of the team members matter in some regard, and I really enjoyed that element. There's no tag-along person.
Yeah, I think episode 3 and episode 10 are similar in certain ways, but they kind of are the opposite sides of the rebellion in some ways, which is, one is a group of people have no other option who have to fight the Empire out of necessity and survival, and you've got the other side who are people who meticulously plan to take down the Empire. Both suffer losses in different ways, but both are rebels in very different ways because of the situation the Empire's put them in different ways. And I think that's a really interesting way to kind of show what this show is all about, are the different forms of rebellion, because we've got teased of that in Rebels, but that was following one main group of rebels. And Andor, although it is mainly one individual, we're seeing so much more. So running back into episode 11, one thing I want to talk about, and I want to get both your thoughts on, is a character who I think is another star. I mean, every scene with every character is amazing, obviously Mon Mothma and everyone else that we'll get to, but Dedra Meero of the ISB is phenomenal. Tonya, please tell us anything you want to tell us about Dedra Meero, the ISB, and then obviously the whole Krieger stuff that was going on in this episode. Any thoughts of any of that stuff?
I'm not ready.
If I can go to Thomas if you need a few moments.
I mean, it's phenomenal acting, so there's definitely that, and the complexities of being put in this situation. I mean, on some level, it's striving and rising and trying to be there on your own, but there's also just all of the different subsections of it, the intersections of doing this as a woman, and they don't point to it, but you can feel it, you can see it in the way that other people act. I love the tension between the other characters who are supposed to be at the same level. Like, you see the competition and the fact that you can't trust anybody there. You can't. They're all backstabbers. And she's not wrong. So I think they've done a brilliant job of making us kind of root for her success to a certain degree, even though she's not the one we want to ultimately win.
Yeah.
Like, they've made her, to start at the beginning, they made her kind of an underdog in her world. And we're watching her rise within that. And we're rooting for her to succeed with all of these people we don't like. Even though we don't necessarily like her, but we like her more than the others. So I think that's a testament to the acting and to the writing. Like, they have done a really nice job of that.
Yeah.
And you need to have a good villain for the story to be compelling. You need to have someone who feels competent in opposition to the heroes. And I think that they're doing a nice job of that.
Mm-hmm. And I will go to Thomas about his thoughts on Dedra in a second, but just while I've got you as well, Tonya, like it's a radio show, like we're on the line. I just want to know, Cyril, what are your thoughts on Cyril Khan? Because he's like on a similar path of Dedra in his mindset, but he's a very, very different character. So how do you think he sort of counters with her?
When I first saw him, I thought he is going to end up being Empire. Like the way his uniform was all crisp in comparison to everybody else, and his posture is so erect, and he just looks like the type you can just, it's usually someone with no pigment that looks like it's not a healthy lack of pigment. It's just you have been in gray, in spaceships with no sunlight. You just look kind of sickly, and he is lawful evil. This is the rule, and we're going to follow the rules no matter what. So I think he's a good addition to the Star Wars world. He is definitely more underdog than she is because he's getting in trouble for these elements. But I think he would make an excellent member of the Empire, and I will be disappointed if he doesn't succeed in something in a way that brings him on board there. So it's like, even though it's an awful thing for him to go to the Empire, if you're on the side of good or whatever, but I want to see him get that. Like, I think he deserves that for all of his hard work. He has a set of beliefs, and he's not showing that he's a bad person. He just knows these are the rules. This is what we should care about. People are breaking the rules. And now I'm getting criticized for doing what I believe is right.
Completely. Thomas.
On Dedra Meero, real quick, I love her. I love her so much. She's until Bix, I should say. I loved her until Bix, and then she hurt my girl Bix, and I'm like, you know what? You are a fascist. You can go back to the villain side of my fandom. You can go hang out, like you can go hang out with Director Krennic or Palpatine. Like, yeah, I'm gonna root against you because you're really good at this. But I really enjoy her interactions with Cyril, because it shows the difference in their story, the difference in their power dynamic, and that she has the I'm going to grab the gun myself and shoot you mentality. And Cyril is a little bit more buttoned up. Like, I'm going to follow the rules because this is what I do. Man, that really sounds like me. Am I Cyril here? Anyway.
With your notepad.
So
I can't hear the name Cyril without thinking of Archer either.
I was thinking that, and then that makes me think of Jerry from Rick and Morty, because of the same voice actor. So it's all like the trifecta of kind of like what's the term from It's Always Sunny? Soy boy beta cucks. That's the kind of that's the term they would use for those three individuals. Okay. Just kind of weaker individuals perceived as. But sorry, railroading Thomas's thoughts.
I just call myself Cyril and I get called a soy boy something cucks. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
I wasn't aiming at you, Thomas.
So I hated Cyril from the very beginning because I'm like, you're too buttoned up. You're a little bitch. You're also a bad guy. You're chasing my boy Andor. And after the second episode, I go, this guy's not bad, actually. He's lawful. I don't like him because what he's doing is going to cause conflict, but also like, he's looking at this from the right perspective. We go a little bit further and we meet his mom, and I fucking hate his mom. Edie Khan is killing it. I mean, killing it. She has certain facial expressions that remind me of Pelimato, and because I hate her character, I'm like, God, I hate that awesome little twinge you do with your eye. That's pretty hilarious. And if I didn't hate you, I'd be laughing. Like, I'm so enraptured with how good she is being just a fucking jerk to her son. Which is somehow, I hate to say this, made me root for Cyril a little bit. After he showed himself to be a creepy stalker vampire stalking Dedra.
Wait, you're saying all of this like it's a bad thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're going to stalk someone, maybe not stalk them to their job where they're the head of ISB, like a whole sector.
You're hot,
maybe
it's okay. But he's not really hot. He's only cute. He's not hot.
I was gonna say, like, he does not hit the hot factor from what I have been told. I'm glad you concur with my resources.
Because he's too much of a goody-goody, that's why.
He's got no edge, though, has he? He's like a butter knife. That's how I describe Cyril Khan. He's just he's efficient.
Like a butter knife.
He's efficient. He's needed, but he's not.
Has kind of a point at the end.
Just
of it.
A very slight. Very slight serrated edge. Like Dedra is like an assassin's blade. She's like the thing from the MCU, the Thanos' perfectly balanced blade. She's this complex, interesting, perfect, made thing together for its uses of evil. His is just like, yep. It's going to spread butter, and that's what he's going to do forever. But he's very serious.
It'll still hurt when it stabs you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, a plastic spoon will still stab you and cut you. I mean, it might do worse than a butter knife. We'll have to find out.
Go in the eye. That's where you want to go. You go for the eye or the neck. That's good for a plastic or spork.
Yeah. Oberon the fuck out of him. I mean, just do it. I love that. Getting back to Cyril, because in this episode. Again, I'm rooting for him. He gets the call from the sergeant, who's also the commissioner from the Batman, and he said shit in Star Wars and fuck in a DC movie. And I mean, I've never wanted to be someone so much in my life. So that's awesome. But he comes back. He's smelting stuff. Is it Haitian smelt? I don't know. We'll find out later. And he gives the information of, Andor's mom has died. Cyril goes into his little safe, gets his hidden credits, dips on out of there. And now I'm like, am I rooting for Cyril? Because I don't want to jump to, I guess we can jump to this point because we've already seen Andor get back to Ferrix, and now Dedra's going to Ferrix. I think Cyril is going to be it's going to be three people chasing Andor. You've got Vel and Cinta, who are supposed to kill him for Luthen. You've got Cyril, who's on his own personal mission against, whatever he thinks is going wrong. And then you've got the ISB and Dedra Miro just going down for the Aldani stuff and really to find Luthen. So you've got someone on his own vendetta. You've got someone trying to kill someone for Luthen and someone trying to capture someone to find Luthen. And I find it really interesting how it's all going to go, because I see this instantaneously as she's going to see Cyril. Cyril's going to say, hey, listen, I was living here. Technically, I can be here because beep, bop, boop. And he's going to be the one to find the weak link and give it information to Dedra. And that's how he's going to become an Imperial, because I'm so for him being in the ISB. He would fit in well. Thrawn would love him just like he loved Eli Vanto. And I think that Andor is going to go to Vel and Cinta asking for help, despite them trying to kill him, and using Nimic's manifesto that he picked back up out of his lockbox in the shower this episode. And I think that's how it's all going to play next week with these characters. And that's it. We can talk about Luthen now. Sorry.
It's a fair shout, but we don't want to get to Luthen yet. Not quite yet. Not quite blowing the load yet. We've got one little bit of foreplay left before that. And it's some pretty dirty stuff. And that's Saw Gerrera. I should have said rough stuff. That'd have worked better. Oh well, sorry guys. But he is in a cave, I suppose.
Guys, nice.
Nice. Yeah, very good. But yeah, so Saw Gerrera, one of the things I love about Saw Gerrera is that he pops up in so much Star Wars content, and he, apart from in his Clone Wars days where he's a lot younger, which he was created in before his other appearances, Forrest Whitaker plays him in everything, which is amazing. He voiced him in Rebels, he voiced him in Jedi Fallen Order, he played him in Rogue One, played him in Andor, and it's just like he really likes the character. He's much like Genevieve O'Reilly with Mon Mothma. She's played Mon Mothma in all the animation, in Revenge of the Sith, and in Rogue One and Andor. Obviously, the only time she didn't was the original trilogy, obviously, because that wouldn't have been possible. But when you get these characters and you get an actor who plays them so much, they have such a feel for it. And obviously, Forrest Whitaker's a fantastic actor anyway. But I feel whenever he plays Saw, I just... I'm not one to say we should have 100 spin-off shows of every character. I mean, if they're all like Andor, maybe we should. But that's not what's going to happen, is it? If they make loads, they're going to screw it up, like they kind of did with Book of Boba Fett in some ways. But with Saw Gerrera, he's probably the one character of all characters I've seen, I think, that I would be like, I would genuinely pay money for a Kickstarter just to have just the life of Saw Gerrera. Like, I know we're getting bits of it. We've got a bit of it in Clone Wars. We've got him in Bad Batch. He's probably going to show up again in Bad Batch.
Do you think he feels like a cameo? I know that technically he is, but do you think he feels like one? Because I don't.
He feels like a character which, at the moment, for people who, obviously, I'd imagine 99% of people who've seen this have seen Rogue One, but like, I don't think people understand his significance and how important he is to the Rebel Alliance in a lot of ways how they define who they are and who they aren't going to be. And his extremism in Rogue One, you just get told he's an extremist and he acts a bit extreme, but it's right at the sort of the breaking point of the Galactic Civil War starting. So you kind of like, oh yeah, he's a bit extreme, but he's living in a cave, whatever. But then you get a bit of it in Jedi Fallen Order, and you get a bit of it in Rebels. And Rebels, I think, is probably the place that's really shown his extremist views so much more than obviously of the Ghost crews, because they're obviously a lot more moral, they're a lot more kind of Jedi in their kind of views, shouldn't kill people. And Saw is like, I will kill hundreds of civilians to hurt the Empire if I have to. And it's like, I think season 2 is probably, we're going to get like a Saw specific arc, or I really hope we do, of just a few episodes of just him doing some horrendous stuff for the greater good. Which is exactly what is the conversation with Luthen and Saw. And I thought this conversation was one of my favorite parts of the episode. It's so powerful, and it really shows the difference in, you see Mon Mothma and the decision she thinks she's going to be making. It's very heavily hinted that she's going to be essentially selling off her daughter to get herself out of financial trouble to Davos Golden and things. That's the heavy insinuation, but you can see the toll it is taking on her to even be on the path that she's on. She's physically looking more tired.
Say that so lightly, though. It's not just financial trouble. No. If she gets caught, her whole family is dead. Yes. Like, this is not to get myself out of financial trouble, to keep me from getting in trouble with, the Empire because of where my money went. This is going to destroy all of them. It's a 100%. Much bigger thing than that. It started with finances, but
I didn't mean the problem is with the finances. I meant the problem that's going to happen due to her finances. I was trying to...
It's just the way you said it made it sound like, oh, I could sell off my daughter and then I won't have financial trouble anymore. Well, no, it's a little bit bigger than that.
Oh, it 100% is. But my main point, I want to clarify, I love Mon Mothma and all her storylines are incredible. She's one of my favorite elements of the show. But the contrast of her doing something, which obviously is a big deal, selling off your daughter essentially for all those things, but to try and do things for in really the greater good in a different perspective, and the toll it's having on her. And then you have like Saul and Luthen almost laughing about them just letting 51 people get killed, and an important part of the kind of network they're growing just to get to do more damage to the Empire in the long run. And you can see that they're not really affected. They're like, I know it's hard, we shouldn't do it, but it's more of they're struggling with almost the mathematical equation of it, more so than the true morality of it. They start to at the start of the conversation, but as it goes on, they kind of rationalize the decision. They kind of go, we're going to lose a lot of people, but this is for the greater good. And by the end of it, they are kind of smiling. Whereas with Mon Mothma, it's, I at least interpret it in a very different way of just like this act of hers, which is still very heavy in a lot of ways. You see what it's doing to her, and it's the two opposite ends of the rebellion of what people are willing to do and the toll certain actions can take. And I think that's shown as well with the locations they're at, the things they're wearing. Mon Mothma is very clean and white, and a lot of what white is meant to be is pure in a sense. She's an angelic good. She's a very angelic figure. You see her in the original trilogy and things. Saw is a guy in a cave who kills civilians, so it's like, and he's, covered in dirt. He's living in a cave and stuff. So it's like, and the garbs that he wears is grey and dark and things. So I think that the two comparisons of those characters are going to really flourish in the second season. We're going to get these two, hopefully seeing them butt heads, as was insinuated in Rogue One. But I've just spoken a lot about those two characters. So, Tonya, love please tell us what you think about Saw and Mon Mothma. Oh, and obviously both of you can jump in, but we'll start off with Tonya.
I don't think that they were taking it lightly. You said they were almost joking about it. First of all, both of them are doing that whole macho thing where they can't really show their emotions. It's just a front. Mm-hmm. But I think it hurts both of them a great deal. But they've already gone through so much and had to make a lot of really hard decisions that led to this moment, where it's not the first time they've had to make an awful, disgusting call like this for the greater good. I think they are internalizing the pain, where this is the first time Mon has had to deal with something like that. And it's her family. It's a little bit different. She's just dealing with this one person who means the world to her. And even though she hasn't made the decision really yet, she just knows she doesn't see any way out of making that decision. I don't think it's fair to say that they're blowing it off. She's not gone through what they have had to do. Like, they're out there making the tough calls, which is just like in war. You don't want a squishy general, because then everybody dies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's dealing with a different aspect of it, and they're both very important aspects, but I don't believe that anyone is taking it lightly or joking about it.
Fair enough. Tom, what are your Thomas, what are your thoughts on that sort of perspective? Do you agree more so with myself or with Tonya, or somewhere in the middle?
I'm definitely more on Tonya's side on the they're like yeah, the greater good, call it what you will. Let's call it war. Like they lean right on into it, and it's like this is what we've come to then. Okay. The jokiest part of it is when he says, two tubes, yeah, he's my man. He tells me everything. Like, that was the funniest line of this whole episode to me. He just says it's so casual and so earthbound, and then he snags his gun and points it at Saul. But I do love how we have such juxtaposition of what kind of decisions and sacrifices are needing to be made. One is, I'm sacrificing Anto Krieger and 30 plus men, maybe 50. I don't remember the number.
I think because 30.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. I thought it was 50 last week, so that's good to know. 30 plus Anto, all of them. I'm sacrificing those lives, those souls, because I'm going to get a level up on the ISB. Oh, we've won. We took them out, because otherwise they're going to question the guy on the inside.
And every life we've lost up until now won't matter anymore, because we just blew it.
Exactly. Over 6 years, I think he's had his man inside the ISB, or maybe it's 5. But then you have Mon Mothma, who is trying. She's basically going to have to sacrifice her daughter in some form or fashion. I think she needs I think her and Davos are going to have a conversation, and Davos is going to essentially pull out of her what's really happening. I have a very strong feeling that he wants to rebel. He's hinted at it. He's talked to Tacoma. Tacoma chose him specifically. So it feels to me like I'm trying to bring these people in, Mon. Like, you and I now see you and I, we don't like the Empire. We want the Empire to go away. He also wants the Empire to go away. But he also can get your daughter out of the crosshairs, because he can marry those kids can marry. She is now under his protection, and everything that you do falls on you and Perrin. Your daughter is now safe. That is a good sacrifice to make. Much easier than killing 30 people plus Krieger by letting them go straight into the Empire and just die. That's a very Thrawn thing to do. Part of me thinks Thrawn is there. God, I hope so. Get off the blue guy, Thomas. So I really enjoy the juxtaposition between the two. And I think next week, Luthen and Mon are going to have a conversation, and it's going to have to come out, and it's going to have to weigh the difference. You can either protect your daughter, or you can kill 31 men. You make the choice on which one you'd rather do. I don't have a soul anymore. I only talk to ghosts. I'm Luthen, by the way, in case you weren't sure whose voice of opinion that was at the very end. And I really enjoy it. I also love I can't wait to see where Vel ends up. I feel like Vel is such a wild card in the Mon Mothma story. And on top of the whole selling your daughter off for the highest, safety net, if you will, Leda wants to go into the old traditions. She would have no problems being, cast into it. She's accepting that. And if Mon, wants to do it the right way, if they want to make it look the right way, she'll go to Davo. Better yet, Davo can go to Perrin, because they were already old buds. They mentioned that as well. Saw Gerrera, though, I love how each time we see Saw Gerrera, he's an entirely different level of crazy. And it's because we always see him in my favorite type of storytelling, which is nonlinear. You go back to the Clone Wars when he first started. He is radical. He wants to do everything. He's a little bit crazy. You go to Rogue One, he's batshit, gone, lost in a cave. Like, lies! Every day, more lies! And then I don't remember where we saw him next. If I'm not mistaken, it was in Rebels, where he tries to kill an entire race. He tries to commit Geonosian genocide. And that's just not cool, man. He's so paranoid about every little thing. And then you go back to the Force Awakens. Nope, the Fallen Order, that one. And you're just like, yeah, okay, this is Saw Gerrera. He's always been radical. And this feels like, yeah, this is Saw Gerrera from the Clone Wars. Of course it is. He literally lost his sister like 3 years ago. He's far angrier here. Now, in Andor, he's like right on the cusp of like, I'm not so much angry anymore. I've lost Jyn Erso by this point. I'm sad. I'm getting older. And then he finds out that, oh, you have a man inside the ISB. What if you're in the ISB? Huh? How many men do you have? Who's telling you stuff for me? What's going on? I'm losing my freaking mind. Gun gets pulled and he goes, I'm back. Like he gets pulled back in with that gun in his face and he settles back down and they have an amazing discussion. And I find it interesting that he can't keep it together without his life being on the line. And I wonder if that's what they kind of have been hinting at here and there, because he's been fighting a war since he was, if I'm not mistaken, like a late teenager. Like he's around the same age as Anakin Skywalker, if I'm not mistaken. I'm literally purely basing that off looks alone.
It's around that.
He's been in the field. He's been in the field this whole time. And you notice Luthen didn't answer the question. He never did say if he had someone there, which means he does.
Oh yeah, obviously. And Saw knows that, like last time they were talking about Aldhani and they're joking back and forth. That's exactly what you would say if you wanted me to believe that you didn't do it. Yeah, that's exactly what you would say. And it's like, I super feel like Saw seeing through him, but that's just me. I love Saw. I love how he's the one who's bringing moral judgment to a conversation. When it comes to sacrificing lives, because you don't kind of expect that. Even from the Clone Wars, he's like, I'm willing to do whatever I need to do what we need to do. That's not what he says at all in any way, shape, or form. So don't quote me on that, kids. And
that was your worst impression yet, I will say. All the other ones have been spot on.
Thank you. He's got a different voice actor in that. I can't do it. I can do old Saw, but young Saw, hard, difficult, too difficult. I really enjoy how we come out of this scene though, and we jump to Clea. We've not talked about Clea. I gotta say this: Luthen is playing chess. He's the king. He can only move one space at a time. I go to Aldhani, I come back. I go over here, I come back. I go over there, I come back. When we see him, he's only interacting with one piece at a time. When we see Clea, she's interacting with multiple pieces at a time, running smoke screen, to use American football terminology, also Batman terminology, to get people away from Luthen. And in this episode, we find out, like, officially, she's the Madam Web of the communication array going on. She's got the line to she had the line to Ferrix. She's got a bunch of other lines going on that she tells Vel. It's not about what I have done recently. It's about what I'm going to do. I have planned for every possible scenario. She's the queen of this chess match. While Luthen can only really deal with one space, one move, one person, one little thing at a time, because when he gets involved, it's fine-tuned. Clea can move everywhere. She's got everything. She's the one that if she were caught, I think at the end of the day, she's Axis. Because Pac, it's mentioned that Pac met a lady at a separatist meeting. She's the lady. She's the one meeting everyone and introducing these people to Luthen. And Luthen is the face, but she's the real Axis behind it all. She's almost his puppet master, but I think that's Bail Organa. We won't go there.
Well, I wonder if she's going to become the sacrificial lamb, or if he becomes a sacrificial lamb. It just kind of depends, because it depends how, because what you've been saying there is a very interesting perspective, and I'm inclined to agree. I think that she probably does have more of that power in a sense, but is he the one more so with the plan? Because the conversation they kind of had, it seemed more like she was doing most of the stuff, but he's kind of been the one who, at least he thinks, is figuring stuff out. There are moments where she's like, you need to go forward with this, or you need to go forward with that. So she may be playing him, but I feel like both of them would sacrifice the other one to continue themselves, continuing with the the early stages of the rebellion. But
I feel like they have an agreement to be that way, though. I don't think it's like this secret thing that they would stab each other in the back. I think they understand this is the deal. This is the way it has to be.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I've been on it since episode 3. Luthen's going to die at the end of this season. And the end of this episode for him was very close and potentially sets up, being chased about, having a signature and transponder code that's going to hurt him in the future.
Or make him go out in a
his
big
ship
blaze
has
of glory.
been noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He has a very recognizable ship. But yeah, I think he's going to go out. I think this episode was like a hint of he's going to go out in a blaze of glory. I think if he's going to die, he's going to do something mental, like take down a Star Destroyer or do something that's going to allow the major players of his own chess pieces to get out to survive. Obviously, Andor in some capacity. But if Val's going to survive, if any of these other individuals are going to survive, if obviously, or to potentially prevent Mothma from getting incriminated in some ways, because obviously she's still got a connection to Aldhani.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get the vibe.
I think that was part of that conversation of sacrificing the little for the great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. And also, I just want to say that Mon Mothma scene where she's basically telling Vel, I think it is, about everything. I found that so powerful. Like, I love Genevieve O'Reilly anyway as Mothma and things, but I just think her acting in that scene once again. I mean, her and Stellan Skarsgård are just doing. I mean, I keep saying everyone's doing such a great job, but it's like the two of them. I've seen Stellan Skarsgård and loads of other things, but I think this is one of his best roles.
So powerful on screen. They are. Yep. Yes, I agree. It just makes me feel like he's underrated. He's underutilized in these other things.
Yeah. He's not been used his full potential. You see the change when he has the kind of two personalities. It's phenomenal. And then with Mothma, it's funny because each of the pieces, each of the people, they somewhat reflect each other. You've almost got like, I almost think of it as like a pie chart, and you've got, Dedra Meero, you've got Cyril Khan, you've got Mon Mothma, and they're almost like a reflection of the one next to them, but in a different way, like a slight, like an asymmetrical reflection. So you've got Cyril and Dedra like right next to each other because, lawful good and then the lawful evil kind of things. And you've got like Mothma's next to Luthen, and Luthen's next to Saw, because Saw and Mothma are quite far removed from each other, but Luthen is quite similar to both of them in a different way, and you've almost got these characters that are sort of almost 20% changed from the next person along, and they're all intertwined in this, fight for power. Really, at the end of the day, it's kind of in each individual's different power. Andor's power to begin with is realistically just survival, and then it becomes freedom, and then it's just becoming, the cost of a rebel is what this series is almost about. Is you see all these different rebel sects and how these different people become rebels or are rebels, but it's like they all go through different sacrifices. Nemik was the idealist and probably the best, and then he had a horrendous end. And I think Jack said it on a prior episode of Andor, the discussion show, and he said Nemik is more or less, a lot of his views align with what would be considered, say, a communist or someone on the far left, socialism, and he is killed by capitalism. He's killed by credits. And that's like when Jack said on the podcast, I was like, I knew I invited you on the show for a reason, because that's far more clever than anything I thought about.
Yeah.
But we are getting nearer the end of the time because, we've been chatting now for quite a long time, and I'm sure we could chat for much, much longer. So we will begin to wrap up here. But is there any other characters or points that yourselves that we haven't tackled that you want to just squeeze in before we bid our farewells? Tonya, do you want to go first? Any final thoughts?
I will say that even though we didn't get to see much of her, I think that the big storyline is still very compelling. It's, what did they do to her? She can't even walk. And the way they end it with not even telling us what she says, like they still left us that. I was hoping we would go back to her in this episode. And it was like, nope, that was it. That was your teaser. So it's I'm being pulled through her story because she's just had one horrible thing after another happen to her since the beginning, but she's still been an integral piece to all of this. Like, she's been part of the communications, and she's been motivation for things that have happened, and she's been someone to connect pieces together. Like, I don't think she even realizes how important she has been to this storyline. So we haven't talked about her. That's all. It's not that hers is the most compelling story, but I think it is compelling, and I'm interested to see where it goes.
Yeah.
And not just because I think she's just really, really hot.
I mean, I do agree with that statement as well.
Fair.
Yeah, she is very attractive. I mean, pretty much, not that it's an important factor, but there's one thing, which is almost everyone in the show is quite attractive. Even in all of them, it's just like...
I don't think so. I don't think everyone is very attractive. No, wow. I think there are plenty of not attractive people.
Really? Who do you think?
In lead roles, but I don't want to call them out because, to each their own.
Well, you can't just tease us with that. You should just agree with me. Now, who do you find, like... There are certain people who I think... I'm not trying to turn this into who's attractive in Star Wars, even though that sounds like what I'm trying to do. But just out of intrigue...
I'm not attracted to Diego Luna.
I am. What a man. I think he's probably the weakest actor, I'd say, of the leads. I don't think he's a bad actor, but I just think...
a bit of a mumbler.
He is. I feel like I link that to kind of him somewhat... Almost being not quite a street rat, because that makes me think of, Ezra, but like kind of a grown up,
which
more
is
mature
just
version.
Proof that he's Aladdin.
Maybe, but I feel like Diego Luna. I really like him as an actor, but I don't think I've seen him in anything where I'm like, "You're phenomenal."
I like him.
I don't
find him attractive. He's just average. Like he's not this leading man, handsome guy.
Fair, that's fair.
And you don't need him to be. In fact, he would stand out more. I don't think the story would be believable if he were that attractive, because then he wouldn't blend in as an everyman. You would absolutely know, oh, that hot dude, he's on this planet, because everybody's looking at him. Or I don't think Bix could go from planet to planet without being noticed.
Yeah.
Can't even hop in an episode with makeup and red eyes and chapped lips and still not be attractive. So I concur.
Right.
Indeed, I completely agree. Well then, Thomas, any you can add to the attractiveness conversation if so desired, but on top of that, are there any things we have not yet tackled in this episode that you want to mention?
Honestly, no, I think we've actually covered it all, which is rare because I normally come up with like 35 different things to talk about that are totally inconsequential, but could lead to something big in the future.
Yes, well, that's my MO, but...
we didn't see Perrin, which is always a fucking plus. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, but I'm intrigued. There's the theory that, once again, I think Jack... it might be Jack or maybe it was Spider-Dan. Someone else on the discussion show, sorry, friends. But they were saying that there's the interest is Perrin actually a massive dick? And is he going to be the one who turns Mothma in? Is he going to be someone that Mothma kind of has to sacrifice to continue her thing? Or is he actually going to be a secret rebel? And one of the reasons they've been clashing so much, and he's been acting like such a dick to her, is because he thinks she's so far into the Imperial machine, and he's so far on the other side of it, but they never have that conversation. And I don't know. I think they're playing him to be a dick, and I don't think he's going to turn to be a goodie, but I thought it was an interesting idea.
I like the idea. He's too close with certain deep Imperials that I just don't think it matters. He's too much of a frat bro. So sucks to be that guy. I do enjoy the way that they've got this back and forth, Mon and him. I don't really, man. Am I allowed to talk about book spoilers that Tonya may or may not read from Princess Leia?
I'm not going to read the books.
Beautiful. So, Bail Organa and Mon Mothma.
I shouldn't say that. I have no plans to read the books, but if I do, it's my fault. If it's spoiled right now, you have my permission to spoil the books.
If you decide to read any Star Wars books, can you contact me first? Because there's 4 or 5 main books I think people need to start with. There's only one's Legends, but the rest of them for the new canon at the moment.
Are you saying you might be a good resource for that?
Maybe. I know it's a surprise to you.
That never would have occurred to me.
No. I mean, why would that?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Look,
those are Star Wars books.
They are Star Wars books. It's almost all I read.
I didn't know. I never. Again, like I said earlier, I never learned how to read. I didn't realize those said Star Wars.
Mike, if you have a Catwoman episode on anything, can you contact me first?
No, I won't. If I do anything to do with Loki either. Loki series 2. You and I aren't doing any discussion shows with that. Disgusting. We've already done one. It's Thomas. Just that was the joke. We did a Loki discussion show with the other ones.
Oh, I figured as much. I mean,
well, you didn't know, so he told you.
The audacity of him asking me to contact him before I read a Star Wars book. Like,
yeah, but you did start watching Clone Wars and you didn't tell me.
Okay, yeah, but that was new new in our relationship. That was years ago.
That's still that's why that
are you keeping
tiny
score, Mike?
Yes, and I'm winning.
No.
Do you know how many times I've consumed Catwoman content and not told Tonya about it? 0.
Have you watched Harley Quinn on HBO Max?
No.
Oh, she's very good on that show.
I imagine there's no...
The music, every time she's talking, I just love it.
So sultry.
Like, she wasn't cool enough. We need to have the smooth jazz playing behind everything she says.
Because I can do what I want. Like, she's just got that energy. What were we talking about? Chandrila. Right. Princess Leia of Alderaan, Mon Mothma and Bail Organa fake an affair. Oh, look at that. He's got it ready to go. By Claudia Gray. They fake an affair so that they can continue their Rebel Alliance meetings. That is set, I want to say 2 years from this point in time in the canon.
It's about
so she is, whether Perrin is there or not, who the hell knows? Hopefully not. But it's going to be intriguing. I don't know if she gets turned in, she gets out of it in some way, or gets a slap on the wrist because she's a senator. Like, I'm not sure, but I feel like she's at some point she's going to have to dirty her hands. And I think this with her daughter is going to be the dirtiest it is. And it might be the first and only time her and Perrin agree on something this whole series. Could it save their relationship? No, because he's a piece of shit.
I don't recall Perrin showing up in any other canon content. I might be wrong there, but and that gives me the impression because of, as you say, Leia, Princess of Alderaan, which is a book that I was not excited to read, but I read it because I was going to interview Claudia Gray, and I did. It's amazing. And I was like, I want to read every Claudia Gray Star Wars book. And I read that, and I was like, this is amazing. What? I was like, I don't need to hear much more about Leia.
And because I heard that interview, it made me think maybe I should read this book. It was
one of those books that I really didn't expect to be as good as it was. But Claudia Gray writes some incredible... I mean, Lost Stars is arguably the best Star Wars book in the canon. I'd say it's the best starting point for any Star Wars fan. It's so good. But everything Claudia Gray writes is goldmine. But try not to go off tangent about those things. But yes, I don't think Perrin appears in other content to my knowledge. So I suspect that he has to go out of the picture in some form. So we'll see, because there's a certain thing in Rebels that we know about that I know a lot of listeners still haven't watched Rebels. Guys, get on that. I always talk about Rebels, one of the best Star Wars piece of content there is.
I was going to accidentally drop a spoiler on the Rebels, non-Rebels watchers.
Yes, Secret Cargo. That's the Easter egg.
Yeah,
isn't it? Yes.
Season 3, episode 18. It's amazing.
Yes. So make sure if you want to know what happens, to certain characters that are in Andor, check out all of Rebels and get up to that. And then, lots of characters that pop up in this are in Rebels. And there's going to be some sort of crossover, I imagine. Did you just pick your hand up?
I did, yes.
I like the politeness. There.
I do it sometimes.
Why now?
Yeah, of all the times.
Because I wanted to make sure it happened before we started transitioning out, because you both have watched Rebels. Mm-hmm. And everybody knows at the end of season 1, there's a speech that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's Ezra's speech. Do you think we get some form of that, or maybe a mention of that?
I think we'll get a mention
next week's episode.
Oh, next week. I don't know. I think series 2, we're going to get some live action Rebel cameo. Well, technically we've already had that because Chopper's in Rogue One, but aside from Chopper, we're actually going to get a live action Rebels character. I imagine Hera, probably. But I don't know if it's just going to be a one-off mention or where it's going to be. Maybe be right near the very end or something, and use it as like a soft thing to be like, ooh, we've already cast someone in this role. Are they going to show up in future content? Ooh, can't talk about that.
And Thrawn.
Yes.
Thrawn too. Also Thrawn.
Well, he's already been mentioned, so we know he's coming at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wonder if that's going to be a case and that they're going to do mention. But the episode we just mentioned of Rebels, that's a very big thing to a certain character in Andor. And I don't know how it's already, the events that are the catalyst for that have already been mentioned. So the stuff we saw in that is going to happen. But that's the tease I'm going to give to Rebels non-listeners. But go watch Rebels, even if you claim to not watch animation. Stop wasting everyone's time. You can ignore Clone Wars for the time being. You can watch Clone Wars after Rebels. Just watch Rebels. Get through Series 1. It's good. Series 2 finale, some of the best Star Wars I think that exists, and there's an episode in which I'm not going to say anything else about, but it's simply called Jedi Knight, and it's probably the best Star Wars I've ever seen in my life, and it makes me want to cry. Anyway, we are going to go, we're going to have to wrap up very soon, but before we do that, we have to bid adieu to our fabulous guest. Thank you so much to both of you for coming on the show. It's been delightful. Please tell us where people can find you, anything you've been up to, and I'll put links in the description to whatever you want. Thomas, as you are the new individual to the Comics in Motion feed, apart from your question to me on the 100th episode of Star Wars Comics in Canon, which I hugely appreciate.
He was on She-Hulk also.
Oh, no, he's beaten. He did it. Actually, that's why I reached out, wasn't it? Because I heard you on She-Hulk, and then I contacted Tonya and said, oh, yeah, the guy who sent me the question. I wanted to...
About Thrawn.
So this is your... Yeah, so you already debuted. So this means that because you've now appeared again, you're no longer just a singular guest star. You're a reoccurring character, Thomas. So tell people where they can find you.
and in the acting world, you know how important that is.
Yes. Do I get paid now? I'm kidding. I ask myself that every time I hit record. I can be found at TC Rochester Act on Twitter, as well as pretty much the same thing across all of the internet. If you go to linktree.com/TC Rochester Act, that is TCROCHESTERACT, you'll get all of my links to my podcast, Reckless Rebellion. It's a podcast all about Star Wars. Guess what? We literally talk about Star Wars every week. And yeah, we go 2 hours regularly because we're reckless. You can find that in your podcast feeds and on Twitter at Reckless Rebels, RECKLESSREBELS. And we have a lot of fun. Episode 50 is dropping, I don't know, time of recording, like in the next 48 hours, whenever I have time to edit it all together. And if you go to my link tree, you'll also see a link to a short film that I created that won some awards, and I don't promote it enough. So there's that. Maybe you'll laugh. Maybe you won't. I don't know.
Perfect. Well, I mean, that's a good opportunity for me to spring load and get you to come on Genuine Chit-Chat. I'll watch the film, we'll talk about that, and then we'll go for the big tangent about Star Wars. And then you can very politely invite me onto Reckless Rebels, and then I can talk about Star Wars for 2 hours straight when I'm not by myself, because that's normally what I do on my show. But Tonya, please tell people.
And then my plan will be complete.
I mean, I invited you into this world, Tonya. Don't get it twisted. I dragged you into this, and anyone you bring in is me being the...
I am aware. I am definitely aware. But when I'm
puppet master.
When I meet someone like Thomas and I know you, it's like, all right, you two need to know each other, because this is a bromance made in Star Wars heaven. So you're already on your way to what I want to have happening, which is you guys being guests on each other's shows and nerding out in a way that doesn't roll the eyes of perhaps the significant others who are sitting there talking about how you talk about Star Wars for at least 30 minutes a day.
Yeah, Megan says that about me. Yeah,
I know.
I know. I was saying that to Thomas, but I was. I don't talk about it for 30 minutes a day. If we take out podcasting, then I don't think I do, but I do mention it. Maybe 30 times a day, but not every time I mention it, I talk about it for an hour. I just refer everything to it as a starting off point. But Tonya, where can people find you aside from on all the magnificent shows of Comics in Motion?
Yes, you can find me all over the place on Comics in Motion. You can find me across social media at Ms. Tonya Todd. You can join my newsletter at MsTonyaTodd.com, or you can check out my acting projects on IMDb.
Absolutely stellar. And as always, you can find me at Genuine Chit-Chat on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. I post snippets of my conversations with interesting people I realise I've now been doing for 5 years, because someone at work asked me about it, and I gave them my business card. How fun was that? 5 years of Genuine Chit-Chat, 2.5 years, nearly 3 years of Star Wars Comics in Canon, and about 3.5 years, I think, of collaborating with the fellows in Comics in Motion that I'm now a proud member of. Oh, we've just lost Tom. Yes. All right, there we go. Bye, Thomas. I don't think that was intentional, but oh well. He did at least he gave his plugs before leaving.
Yes.
Oh, he's come back. He's come back, and he's gone. Wow. Was that?
He just needed the attention at the end.
No. I'm glad I'm back. I was just plugging in my hard line because I was like, oh, I forgot to do that at the beginning. Awkward.
I wondered what was happening then, but I was like, at least he gave his plugs. But yes, thank you. Let me think. At Genuine Chit-Chat, my plug. If you're listening to this, listen to my Star Wars show, Star Wars Comics in Canon. You can, if you've never read a Star Wars comic in your entire life, or if you've never read a comic in your entire life, or any Star Wars books or anything, you've never watched any non-live action series, doesn't matter. All you need to have done is watched the main films of Star Wars, and it helps a little bit if you've seen a couple of series, but it doesn't matter because my show is specifically designed for any fan of Star Wars to get into the comic realm. I go through the plot details of the Star Wars comics so you don't have to have read them, and along the way I give additional details such as species, planets, and connections to other Star Wars content while giving it all in a nice, easy to understand package. And as I've basically tackled every single canon Marvel Star Wars comic that exists, and I'm keeping up to date with it all, and I've tackled all the High Republic content now. So yeah, basically I've done it all in the canon. Lots and lots of fun. So please check out Star Wars Comics in Canon. If you're listening on a podcast app or Comics Motion, you're already there. And if you're listening on YouTube, on the YouTube channel of youtube.com/genuinechitchat, you can check out the various playlists there. Genre playlists, all the Darth Vader stuff is in one little thing. So if you just want the Dark Lord of the Sith, you can listen to me talk about him for hours. But whatever you want to do, you can do it. Exactly. Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate the support. But thank you to our lovely listeners as listening to the show, as always. Thank you to both Tonya and Thomas, the two T's. Really appreciate that. And I'm British as well, so that was good, Thomas. I like that. That was funny. Only because listeners are going to be like, "What is Mike talking about?" Watch the video version. You'll get a bit of a laugh from that. But just thank you both for coming on. It's been delightful. And then we're going to do the finale next week. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll see about that. But thank you again.
Is that you and Jack?
Jack is not going to be involved, so I am actually going to find someone else to join me for that, and I haven't yet put the feelers out. So, because I found out today. So I was like, after this, I'll message some people and figure out who wants to come on. But yes, that will be next week, the finale. And then we'll have a little break. And then we'll get to 23 and be overrun by billions of Star Wars content. And I can't wait for it. But thank you once again, friends, for listening. Thank you both for being on the show. And yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you, Thomas. It was great. So I'll end this recording. So thank you both.
Goodbye, recording.